Jackie Kennedy Onassis was more than a first lady or a style icon. She was a woman of many roles and reinventions, each chapter of her life often mirrored by the home she lived in. Hi everyone, Ken here. Today we are touring Jackie's many mansions. Hit that subscribe button and let's dive into a special episode of This House. Jackie's story begins at a summer cottage by the Atlantic Ocean. In 1929, Jacqueline Lee Bouvier was born into East Coast high society, but all things considered, her first home was relatively humble. Known as Wildmoor, the cedar-shingled cottage in East Hampton was built in 1895 and purchased in 1910 by her paternal grandfather, Major John Bouvier Jr. Wildmoor was no palatial estate. The Bouviers fondly called it the Little House. It's a three-story shingle-style home with a broad wraparound porch, evocative of a classic Hamptons beach cottage. Jackie's parents, Janet Lee Bouvier and John Blackjack Bouvier III, brought their newborn daughter home to Wildmoor in the summer of 1929. The timing was fateful. The Wall Street crash had just devastated Blackjack's finances, so Jackie's grandparents offered the young family rent-free residence at Wildmoor until they could get back on their feet. These idyllic years on Long Island undoubtedly shaped Jackie's graceful poise and love for nature. In 1931, as the Great Depression ground on, Jackie's maternal grandparents built a new lifeline for the family, literally from the ground up in Manhattan. They invited Janet, Jack, and little Jackie to move into a brand new luxury apartment that Jackie's grandfather, James T. Lee, had just developed in New York City. While living at 740 Park Avenue, Jackie led a charmed childhood. She attended Manhattan's exclusive Chapin School for Girls and spent afternoons practicing ballet or reading in the library's window seat. The family split summers between the city and the Hamptons, notably at Lasada, a larger Bouvier estate nearby Wildmoor that Jackie's grandparents had acquired in 1925 as their big house. Lasada, an Algonquin word for place of peace, had expansive grounds where Jackie could ride horses and find peace away from city life. Those summers at Lasada were a balm during a trying time. By 1938, Janet and Jack Bouvier's marriage was faltering. In 1940, when Jackie was about 10, her parents divorced, ending the Park Avenue chapter of her life. For Jackie and her younger sister Lee, the divorce meant shuttling between two worlds, weekdays with their mother and holidays with Blackjack. But soon a new father figure and a new home would enter Jackie's life, bringing her into the orbit of Washington, D.C.'s elite and another iconic estate. In 1942, Janet Lee Bouvier married Hugh D. Auchincloss Jr., an heir to the Standard Oil fortune and a well-connected Washington banker. With this marriage, teenage Jackie gained not only a stepfather, but also a magnificent new home, Marywood, the Auchincloss family estate overlooking the Potomac River in McLean, Virginia. The blended family all settled into this Georgian revival mansion that would define Jackie's formative years. When Hugh D. Auchincloss purchased it in 1930, the estate encompassed 46 acres of rolling woodland and manicured gardens. By the time Jackie arrived in the 1940s, the property had been trimmed to about 7 acres, still a vast playground for an adventurous teen. The mansion itself spread over 23,000 square feet, with 9 bedrooms and 11 bathrooms, indoor and outdoor swimming pools, a tennis court, and numerous elegant entertaining spaces. Original 1920 features like ornate plaster moldings and marble fireplaces still adorn the rooms. Jackie later wrote about it, "I always loved it so at Marywood, so peaceful with the river and those great steep hills." Jackie spent hours riding her horses through the wooded trails on the property or playing tennis. Meanwhile, Janet Auchincloss fully embraced her role as mistress of Marywood, hosting lavish garden parties that drew political and social luminaries to the McLean home. Imagine a teenage Jackie curtsying in the grand foyer as senators, diplomats, and Georgetown socialites arrived for dinner, an early taste of the high-profile life she would later lead on a much bigger stage. Even as she lived in Virginia, Jackie's education took her far afield. She attended boarding school at Miss Porter's School in Connecticut and spent a college year abroad in Paris, but Marywood was always her home base during the 1940s. This period of her life laid the groundwork for her sophisticated, cultured persona. By the time she graduated from George Washington University in 1951, Jackie had acquired fluency in French, a debutante's polish, and the poise of someone comfortable at society's pinnacle. All of those qualities would soon be on display when she stepped onto the public stage, but first, fate intervened at a Georgetown dinner party where Jackie met a dashing young congressman named John F. Kennedy. The two began a courtship that captivated the gossip columns, and on September 12th of 1953, the two were married in what the press dubbed the Society Wedding of the Year. The nuptials took place in Newport, Rhode Island, where Jackie's now stepfather, Hugh Auchincloss, had another family stronghold, Hammersmith Farm. Hammersmith Farm was an appropriate setting for such a grand event. This rambling Victorian-era mansion, built in 1887, had been in the Auchincloss family for decades. Set on a hill overlooking Narragansett Bay, the estate boasted 28 rooms and magnificent grounds. Its gardens were designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, famed designer of New York Central Park, lending a timeless elegance to the property. On their wedding day, some 1,200 guests gathered under a huge white tent on the lawn for the reception, a scene of ladies in summer dresses and gentlemen in ties, sipping champagne amid rose gardens and ocean breezes. For Jackie, Hammersmith Farm was more than just a one-day venue. It symbolized the merging of her world with the Kennedys. After she became Mrs. Kennedy, Hammersmith remained a cherished retreat. During Jack's presidency years later, the Kennedys would often escape to Hammersmith Farm in the summers, and it earned the nickname the Summer White House. The estate's seaside privacy and Gilded Age charm provided a welcome escape from the Washington pressures. One can easily picture Jackie in a casual shift dress and big sunglasses, relaxing at Hammersmith with a view of sailboats on the bay, a rare moment of calm in a life about to become very public. With their marriage, Jack and Jackie embarked on a partnership that would shape American history. After a honeymoon in Mexico, the newly minted Senator and Mrs. John F. Kennedy set up house in Washington, D.C. Their first home together was a red brick townhouse in Georgetown's leafy network of narrow colonial-era streets. This was a rental property, a relatively modest residence built in the 1940s. For the young couple in 1953, however, it was perfect. The house had a cozy, domestic feel despite being in the middle of the capital's social whirl. Yet even as they played house on Dent Place, the Kennedys' ambitions were growing. Jack's Senate career was demanding, and Georgetown was at the heart of the social-political scene. Jackie, for her part, was learning the ropes of being a politician's wife, hosting cocktail parties, decorating tastefully on a budget, and managing the household. In late 1955, Jackie and Jack crossed the Potomac into Virginia to purchase a grand home worthy of their increasingly prominent status. They chose Hickory Hill, a historic estate in McLean not far from Jackie's childhood Marywood. Hickory Hill is an 18-room white brick mansion set on 5.6 acres of lush land dotted with old oak and hickory trees. The estate's 9 bedrooms and 14 bathrooms were more than ample for a couple trying to grow a family. The property's 5 acres gave Jack room to toss a football with friends and family, and Jackie space for her horseback riding hobby. During their brief year living there, Hickory Hill saw some important milestones. Jack, recuperating from back surgery, spent long hours in the upstairs study with aide Ted Sorensen writing what would become his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Profiles in Courage. And for a short while, it looked like the empty nurseries might soon be filled, but the pregnancies never lasted. They sold the estate in late 1956 to someone very familiar, Jack's younger brother Bobby Kennedy. Hickory Hill stayed in the Kennedy family and soon became famous as Bobby and Ethel's boisterous household of 11 children. For Jackie, leaving Hickory Hill closed a chapter marked by both hope and sorrow. She and Jack returned to Georgetown intent on a new beginning as they prepared for the next big steps, parenthood, and as it turned out, a run for the White House. Even as their Washington residences changed, one constant for the Kennedys was Hyannis, Massachusetts. This small seaside village on Cape Cod was the Kennedy clan's ancestral stomping ground, home to the famous Kennedy compound, where Jack's parents had a sprawling shingled house on the shore. To carve out their own space, in 1956, Jack and Jackie purchased a nearby summer home. Summers at Hyannis Port were filled with sailing trips on the family's yacht, clam bakes on the beach, and tough football games on the lawn, often captured by photographers and later treasured as iconic images of Camelot. Life in Hyannis Port also gave Jackie a chance to experience the tight-knit warmth of the Kennedy family. With so many siblings, in-laws, and cousins around, the compound was always buzzing with activity. Back in Washington, the late 1950s saw the Kennedys on the move again. After leaving Hickory Hill, they spent a brief stint in a smaller Georgetown townhouse, but soon upgraded to a more spacious home better suited to a man with eyes on the presidency. In 1958, Jack and Jackie purchased a classic federal-style row house on an elegant tree-lined block. This home would be the last they lived in before the White House. Politically, 3307 North Street Northwest was where Camelot's seed was planted. In January 1960, JFK stood in the parlor of his Georgetown home and announced his run for president of the United States. The home became campaign headquarters in all but name. Strategists and speechwriters came and went, and Jackie gave interviews from the floral-patterned sofa, and the rest is history. Which brings us to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, where in January of 1961, at just 31 years old, Jacqueline Kennedy moved into the White House as First Lady of the United States. The Kennedy years in the White House are often romanticized as Camelot, and indeed, Jackie approached the presidential mansion as if it were a living museum of American history, one she was determined to restore and enrich. During her nearly 3-year tenure as First Lady, Jackie left an indelible mark on the White House through a comprehensive restoration that reflected her passion for art, history, and culture. When Jackie first toured the mansion, she was dismayed. Former President Truman had completely gutted the interior and rebuilt the White House in a historically lackluster manner. The rooms felt like a jumble of styles and lacked the kind of character befitting the residence for the leader of the free world. Quote, "It would be sacrilege merely to redecorate it. It must be restored," Jackie insisted, articulating a clear vision that this was a project of scholarship, not just interior design. As First Lady, she immediately set about assembling a team and resources. She established a White House Fine Arts Committee and, with Congress's approval, created the White House Historical Association to help fund and guide the restoration. Jackie's eye for design and detail transformed the staterooms of the White House, and under her direction, period-appropriate antiques were acquired or retrieved from storage to furnish rooms like the Blue Room, Red Room, Green Room, and Lincoln Bedroom in authentic 18th and 19th century style. In February of 1962, she unveiled the fruits of her labor to the American public in spectacular fashion. She conducted a televised tour of the White House on CBS. She charmed the nation and sparked a new appreciation for historical preservation. Jackie's White House years, though among the most glamorous and impactful, were also marked by profound tragedy. On November 22, 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, a shattering event that abruptly ended the Camelot era. 2 weeks later, after JFK's death, the young widow quietly packed up her children and moved out of the White House, leaving behind rooms she had imbued with history and elegance. Thanks to her efforts, however, the White House itself remains a living museum. She succeeded, and every First Lady since has been in some way a steward of Jackie's legacy in the People's House. Just weeks after leaving the White House, she moved with her kids into a gracious Georgetown home. Unbeknownst to many onlookers, this was actually a home with personal significance. It was the Newton Baker House, a federal-era mansion that the Kennedys had briefly rented back in the 1950s. The Newton Baker House, built in 1794, is a stately Georgetown mansion with classic federal architectural features: a Flemish bond brick facade, white woodwork, dormer windows on a gabled roof, and a graceful fanlight entry. Inside, it offered a generous layout with high-ceiling rooms and elegant mantels suited for both comfort and entertaining. Jackie set about decorating it in a warm style with a mix of family pieces, children's toys, and a touch of her signature French flair. As the world's most famous widow, Jackie became an unwitting Georgetown tourist attraction. Crowds of tourists and curiosity seekers began gathering daily outside. Sensationalist tour buses even idled out front, prompting Jackie to famously post a sign on her door that pleaded for privacy. Despite additional Secret Service protection, the situation grew intolerable. After only about 4 months, she decided to leave Washington. Jackie would soon return full circle to make a new home in New York City and take on a role far from the political spotlight. She chose an upscale apartment building at 1040 Fifth Avenue as her new home. Located on the Upper East Side across from Central Park, the building is a prestigious 17-story limestone high-rise designed in 1930 by Rosario Candela. Jackie purchased the entire 15th floor, a 14-room penthouse apartment, in 1964 for approximately $250,000. The apartment was expansive yet homey. Jackie brought into these rooms the treasured furnishings and art she had collected over the years. Some pieces even came from the White House restoration days. Unlike many jet-setters of her era, she did not decorate to impress or follow trends. As Town & Country later noted, she bought art she loved rather than as an investment. Visitors often remarked that her Fifth Avenue apartment, while undoubtedly luxurious, felt surprisingly intimate and lived in, filled with family photographs, well-worn books in several languages, and the laughter of children accompanied by the pitter-pattering of their dogs' paws. In 1968, she married shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis, becoming Jackie O, and for a time spent much of her life abroad on Onassis' private Greek island and in his homes in Paris and Athens. But she kept the New York apartment all along. It was her anchor in America. After Onassis' death in 1975, Jackie moved back full-time to 1040 Fifth Avenue and reinvented herself yet again. In the mid-1970s, she took a job as a book editor, first at Viking Press and later at Doubleday. During these New York years, Jackie also stepped into the role of a preservationist and philanthropist. Notably, from her base at 1040, she helped save one of the city's greatest landmarks, Grand Central Terminal, from demolition in 1975. Her later years were filled with such civic causes, quiet literary work, and the joys of being a grandmother. On May 19th of 1994, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis passed away in her bedroom at 1040 Fifth Avenue, surrounded by family. She was 64. New Yorkers lined Fifth Avenue as her funeral procession passed, paying respects to the woman who had become one of the city's own. But even so, there were more houses sprinkled into her story. She and JFK would visit the Kennedys' winter home in Palm Beach, and later, in 1979, with her children grown into young adults, she indulged in a dream that harkened back to her East Hampton childhood. She purchased Redgate Farm, a 340-acre oceanfront estate on Martha's Vineyard, paying approximately $1.1 million. The land on the island's remote southwestern end included wideswept dunes, freshwater ponds, dense woodland, and a mile of pristine Atlantic beach. It was essentially a blank canvas of extraordinary beauty for Jackie to shape into a retreat for herself and her family. On this expansive site, Jackie set about building a home that reflected her taste and values. She commissioned architect Hugh Newell Jacobson to design the main house, a Cape Cod-style cedar-shingled residence of about 6,300 square feet, completed in 1981. The seal brochure lauded the estate's extraordinary legacy of art and glamour, but those who knew Jackie understood that its true legacy was one of tranquility, conversation, and family love, exactly as Jackie intended. Many of her mansions still stand, preserved and treasured, whether as private homes or historical sites. In the end, Jackie Kennedy's true home was perhaps not any single building, but the hearts and memories of those who witnessed her grace and grit. Yet the houses she touched have their own stories to tell. They speak of a woman who valued history and sought to preserve it, who balanced public demands with private yearnings, and who found ways to create beauty and sanctuary wherever life took her. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Which of her homes was your favorite, or maybe something else stuck out to you? Either way, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section, and while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.